you don't own your calendar, somebody else will hijack it.
Isn't that a tragedy?
Like people pleasing syndrome.
Mm.
And you let anything happen and anything interrupt your day and you just go with it. And at the end of the day, you can't accomplish what you need to accomplish. You're not finishing your assignments. You're not doing all of your homework. You're not sleeping as much as you are. Like, where are you allowing somebody else to hijack your calendar?
This is the FYI podcast. I'm Josiah Canale.
And I'm Micah Keneally. Happy Friday, everybody.
We are your hosts, babe. Do you like hosting the FYI podcast?
I love hosting the FYI podcast because you, as a listener, have such incredible questions. And it's so much fun to hear what you're up against, what you have questions about, and how we can come alongside you in the Word of God and some of our things that we've learned to do and maybe what not to do in life.
Man, if you had to say your number one favorite thing about this podcast, what is it?
Oh, man, I think it's engaging with the audience and the young adults who are literally asking the questions. So I think that is fun because I think the questions that you are asking are true, are relevant, and you have somebody to process them with, like to know that you are not alone.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite part, Josiah?
Favorite part of the FYI podcast. I mean, this was a little bit like a couple months ago. We were at a gas station driving to preach to a young adult service, and
Oh.
we bumped into one of the listeners, and he was like, "Hey, I literally I was listening in my car. I'm going to the weekend." I just think it's so cool that this isn't just a podcast to me. My favorite part is this isn't just content.
Mhm.
This is community.
Right.
It's not just an event, it's a community. And so, one of my favorite quotes is that whole, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's good.
And let's go far together here on FYI. We're celebrating, gosh, coming up on 3 years. January will be three
Ooh,
years of the FYI podcast.
holy cow.
And I love it.
How?
How is right.
Oh, you guys, time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
And for today's verse of the day, I'm going to
Mhm.
have you read it because this has been a theme in your life.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to make it a theme in my life, and hopefully you are too as a listener. And it comes from Matthew 6:33, and it says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." And if you read the full chapter, it has to do with clothes and food and just like God's provision and providing for his people. And when we seek God first, all those other things start to come and start to unravel in the best way possible, where we get to enjoy God and just the things that He has for His children. So
So today is especially for you if you feel overwhelmed, exhausted,
it's for me then. I feel tired right now.
overscheduled, if you feel like, man, there's so much to do in so little time, if you feel like, where did life go? If you feel like that, or if you felt like that, this is for you. Maybe you recently had a conversation with a young adult or a friend or a family member. Text it to them. Share this episode. While you're at it, subscribe so that you can join the FYI podcast community and never miss an episode like this one.
So good.
And we're going to talk about really practically what are some effective ways when it comes to balancing equilibrium in your life, when it comes to schedule and life and family, or maybe work and school and hobbies, marriage, relationship with God, all at the same time.
Well, I think all those things actually add up and it equals life. And for the listener, this is a question that came in from a young adult, and I would encourage just anybody who's in a season where you feel literally like you're overwhelmed, you're overworked, you're tired, like Josiah said, you're exhausted. Even going back to read Matthew chapter 6, it's actually about being anxious.
Hmm.
And it goes back to anxiety and worrying and being fearful of everything. So I would say with this question, I think it's like an amazing question. And when we are trying to balance in everything, I feel like it's actually nobody has it figured out and nobody has it together. And there are certain things that will pull at you harder in other seasons. There are things that you'll be able to put more money, time, and effort to in different ways as time goes on. But when it comes to this, a balance of life, hobbies, relationships, marriage, relationship with God, relationship with friends, family, I mean, one thing and theme that I'm living out in 2024, and I've said this before, so sorry to hear it again, or say it again, but it's prioritize your priorities.
Love it.
What are your priorities? And I will just share this. We should actually throw the balance wheel up in
Hmm.
this episode. So,
Hmm.
if you've been to any one of the workshops that I've done, whether you're male or female, or if you've done through some of our coaching communities, things that we've done for young adult ministry leaders, is we literally put up this big giant circle, and it's called the balance wheel of life. And maybe balance is even a weird word, is because it's actually not obtainable if we didn't live in a perfect utopia, if we could.
Yes, I will be sure to upload this when you visit www.fyi-podcast.com. There will be a link in the show notes of this episode on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you're listening. There's a link to the balance wheel, and
Mhm.
Mike is going to unpack that,
Mhm.
and I will link it in the show notes.
Yeah. So essentially, it's just a circle and it has like eight different pieces to the pie. The center where all of them intersect is like zero.
Yep.
In a perfect world, everything out here is a 10, right?
And there'd be no clunks, no bumps, no
Yeah.
bounces because it would go smoothly.
Yeah. So in a perfect utopia, I keep saying that everything be functioning at a 10. And that's
Yep.
like your hobbies, your relationships, your home life, your spiritual growth.
Work, finances.
Yes, all those things. So it's different, eight different major areas of life. And then you go into that balance wheel and you rate them. So say your friendships is like, oh my gosh, I'm at a 9 with my friendships, but my spiritual walk with God is like a 2.
Mm,
Okay, maybe that's a little out of balance, right? Maybe more time with God and pulling back with some friend time and evening that out, maybe to like a 6 and a 6, where your wheel, if they were all fives, can start growing outward, right? So that balance wheel can help bring into perspective levels of time management
yep.
and your happiness, joy, and fulfillment of why those things are not functioning maybe to the proper level that you want them to. And it might expose some things. So Josiah and I do this. I know for me personally, we at least do this 2 times a year
Times a year
to
for
four
sure.
times,
Mhm.
probably each quarter, just to kind of really take a personal inventory like, oh, my fun factor, my hobbies is like a 1 right now.
Yep.
Why?
Then it's like, I need to laugh more. I need to get outside. I need to
Yes.
put something fun that I'm looking forward to on the calendar, which
Yep.
rabbit hole for a second. It's like, if you want to have 3 times as much fun in life, what you need to do is put something on the calendar that you're excited about. It
Hmm.
could be a concert, a trip, a vacation, visiting family, going to a sports game, or like, because then you have anticipatory joy, you have participatory joy, and then you have memory joy. And when you have those three things, you look forward to it, you enjoy it in the moment, and then you can look back on the fond memory.
Well, it's like 3 points of reflection and excitement in the
Yep.
process.
Yep.
So with that balance wheel, it just kind of brings forth this awareness of what have I been prioritizing? And that will just rise to the surface naturally. So if you're a season where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a student, I'm going to school, I'm taking all these credits, I'm working, and my home life is like a 1 or a 2 because I'm not enjoying this dorm life. What do you have control over, whether it's time, schedule, people? What do you have control over in the season that you're in to help change, adjust, and really move those numbers where you have a more well-rounded wheel that's not clunking along in life, unfulfilled, overworked, and just really view God's promises as more of a, not so much as a blessing, but more of
Hmm.
a flop in your life.
Hmm. Hmm.
So those are some things to take into consideration even before we start this. So, Josiah, I have a question for you. What are some of the biggest, um, what's the biggest form of advice maybe you have for someone who's asking this question? Where would you start by offering advice?
Well, I mean, if I can put on the life coach hat for a second, if you go to a counselor, some therapists will do this, a life coach, a lot of them will have you do what's called a time audit. And it's almost like the
Mhm.
balance wheel. But another thing that you can do is look at the past week, and it's almost like a budget with your time, or you could do one for this coming week. I remember being a sophomore, I think it was, at North Central University, and I was stressed. I was anxious. I was like, freaking out over how am I going to get all this semester's worth of stuff done. At the time, I was taking, I think, 18 credits, so
Mhm.
full-time load. I was working 20 to 30 hours a week at a job. I was interning another 15 to 20 at church. And then I was playing baseball. And so between practice, like, how did I do it? I didn't sleep very much. I didn't have much of a social life outside of church or work or baseball.
Hmm.
At the same time, I went to the Student Success Center, and every week since then, what they gave me is something that looks like this, but it was a 1 week daily activity schedule from 6 a.m. in the morning till midnight at night. And then I put down in more stressful seasons, I'll color code it. But you asked, like, what's the biggest piece of advice? What's crazy is we do on this podcast quite a bit. We talk about finances.
Hmm.
Like we did a recent episode where we talked about the 7 excuses that people make with their money. I think that time and money are more alike than we realize, except time is the non-renewable resource.
Right.
Because money, another paycheck's coming. You can apply for another job. You could sell some stuff to get cash. But with time, what you have is what you have. It's a gift from God.
Hmm.
And so looking at the 1 hour increments of time, the 24-hour increments of time, the real skilled life coaches, like I've had a life coach, he had me go down to the 15-minute increments. What's your daily screen time average?
Good
I
question.
really try to limit mine going raw, real here. I really put a guard. I do not want more than 4 hours of my day on average to be spent on my screen.
Hmm.
And that's between work, calls, YouTube podcasts, things that I'm emailing, texts, etc. I start to feel it, our kids start to feel it, but I would seriously look at where is the wasted time? Because, like, think about this. Micah and I had a show. We watched White Collar, and we made it through 6 seasons of this show, and they're like 40-minute episodes. There's no commercials. But if you were to ask us, okay, so maybe there's 6 seasons, let's just call it 60 hours.
Hmm.
We don't have 60 hours.
We made 60 hours though, didn't we?
Because it caught our attention. And we're actually living in something they call the attention economy. Maybe you're watching this on YouTube because of a thumbnail caught your attention
Hmm.
and you decided, like, man, I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed with time. Maybe you're listening because a friend said, you're stressed. Fam, watch this.
Hmm.
Maybe it'll help. But bottom line, really practically, I would get a game plan together for where are you going to spend the next 168 hours. And of course, some of it is going to be fun. Of course, some of it is sleeping. So if sleep is already a given, work is already a given, maybe it's classes or community group or church. So those are your structured. And I would get more structured with your spontaneous and
Hmm.
plan ahead. That would be my practical piece of advice.
Well, I think with a calendar, if you don't own your calendar, somebody else will hijack it.
Isn't that a tragedy?
I think I've allowed myself what if maybe you're listening, you're like, I have like people pleasing syndrome.
Mm,
And you let anything happen and anything interrupt your day and you just go with it. And at the end of the day, you can't accomplish what you need to accomplish. You're not finishing your assignments. You're not doing all of your homework. You're not sleeping as much as you are. Like, where are you allowing somebody else to hijack your calendar? I think I lived that way for a long time early on in my early 20s, and to really realize, like, no, I need to learn how to be a self advocate, not rigid, but I mean, I need to be a self advocate. It's like, here's my availability for mentoring somebody.
mm,
Pick a day, pick a
mm-hmm.
time. Here's when I'm available. And getting a little more strict and putting up some guardrails and boundaries. Because when you start understanding how short life is, and in your 20s, you're like, I have forever. The moment you hit 30, you're like, oh my gosh, my life could be half over. And granted, my life could be half over at any age, to be honest with you. But I think when we can identify three different things that are kind of start to change as we age or
Yeah,
change as life moves
yeah.
forward, if family and marriage is in anybody's future, we have to look at, like, what is our master? What does our time look like with our master? If your master is not God, then what idol is in place of that master? Is it sports? Is it that boyfriend or girlfriend? Is it that relationship? Is it
The bank account.
was your, yeah, you chasing money? Like, what is the master of your life? Because it should be God. If you're listening to this, we believe in Jesus, that he died on the cross for us. We believe that we have a relationship with him, communion with him. And so we have the master. And then when you understand who you are and whose you are in that master, it goes to the mission. When you're single, it goes master, mission. What does God have you in? What is he calling you to in the season? It could be finishing school. It could be the military. It could be now you're in your career
Yeah.
path and you're in your dream job. And that is the mission, is to shine a light in whatever dream job God has you in. And then it goes to your mate. The last thing out of the three should be your mate, the person that you're dating, the relationship that you're in. You're not yet married, but you're praying for that help mate in life if it's part of God's story. And then it comes literally your kids if you have kids and everything else. But there's a switch. So when you're single, it's master, mission, mate. If you desire and if you choose to get married, that changes from master, which still stays God is number one. It goes to mate, which is your number two, then your children or whatever, if you have children, and then it goes to
Your
your
mission.
mission.
Yeah.
So that mission and mate switch the moment you get married. So with this question, they're asking relationship, they're asking marriage, hobbies, family,
Mm.
fun, balance, God, everything, blah, here it is. What is the master of your life? Are you married or unmarried? And then what mission does God have you on for now? Because the mission and the approach of that mission can change, but there's something in you that's longing to get out, right? So, some practical things that we can talk about now, because it's like, what practically speaking, how do I actually bless you again,
I'm
just one time,
sorry. Excuse me.
just one time. Good job.
Bless me.
Practical things would be number one. We talked about this calendar. What gets on your calendar, what gets put on your calendar gets done,
It's true.
right?
You need a calendar and you need a to-do list, but if you need to level something up, you put it on the calendar. And if you need to make a future thing beyond your calendar,
Mhm.
it goes to the to-do list.
Yes. And then if you're dating or you want to be dating someday, or if you want to be married someday, or you are married, I would say being intentional with number two would be your date nights. Intentionality with date nights. What does that look like for us?
Well, it's funny because like the Apostle Paul, he writes that singleness is a gift, marriage is a gift, and then I just had a birthday, and I don't know if you have ever experienced this, but it's like your parents maybe got you clothes or shoes or something that you didn't ask for, and you're like, you put on the smile, and you're like, thank you, but you really wish you had a receipt so you could give it back. I think that a lot of us approach the gift of singleness like
Mhm.
that. And
Yes.
especially when it's year after year and you're like, man, I'm 30. I thought I'd be married by now. And you have a timetable and God has a timetable, but is your timetable in submission to God's timetable? And realizing that there is a gift of singleness. And one of the biggest differences that I've
Mhm.
experienced in marriage, now parenting and singleness, if I were to contrast them, it's freedom, flexibility, autonomy with schedule and time.
I'll tell you this, I would much rather be single and learn how to be happy in singleness than get the marriage of gift, having it become a curse, asking God, can I return this?
Right. And it's like neither of us view marriage like that,
Right.
but a lot of people do. And
Yeah.
so you would ask practically what this looks like for us. Like for
Mhm.
us to go on a date night, if it's just you and me,
Mhm.
we need to make sure there's childcare.
Yep.
So it's getting that on their calendar, getting that on our calendar. And then like sometimes I think it was last week, we were coming off a week of travel. I think we did
A wedding.
wedding, so it was like rehearsal and then wedding. So back to back days on a weekend. I preached somewhere that Sunday. I
Hmm.
preached somewhere that Wednesday. And so then gearing up for the next weekend, we were on some podcasts as guests. It was an amazing week. We taught some classes, but
He didn't pace himself, and you can tell he has a cold now.
I'm
I'm
paying
trying not
for
to
it.
breathe the same air as
I'm
you.
human. I'm human. And but what I would say is like I think we went into our date night last Thursday night and we had no plan, y'all,
Hmm.
because we had spent so much time planning the message and the vows and everything and the other sermons that we preached
Hmm.
that then when it boiled down to us, it was like, ah. honey, it's good to just see you and like eat
Just
together
breathe.
and not have to be anywhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So I would just say though, like date night is one of the things. And then what we do for one, we try to do for everyone in our family. We're a
Hmm.
family of four.
Hmm.
And so our daughters see me take Micah on a date. And so then they ask for their own date. And so then my weekend goal becomes, you know what? It's a little bit less about what I need to do in the yard this today. The kids are going to take a priority and they need some daddy daughter time.
Well, he's not only pursuing me in marriage, but now he's prioritizing two little girls that want to be on date night with dad too. So I take him on a girls' night, and then one of them go with Josiah on a dad night or a date night. So it's really learning how to prioritize and keeping the main thing, no matter what it is when it comes down to the main thing is Jesus.
Yeah.
How is your relationship with him? Are you seeking him first above all else? And we lose sight of keeping the main thing. Something else takes that seat. It doesn't matter what it is. If something else takes that seat, that means that that has become an idol, a god, or we're a couple degrees off in our life and where we're going to end up at the end of our lives. So you got something, Josiah?
I got something real quick because it's like seek.
Mm-hmm.
You seek with what? Your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And seeking, it's looking, it's investigating. It's like I lost my beard trimmer this weekend.
You
And
did.
I almost went to buy another one because I was like, I can't find it anywhere. Michael is gone this morning. I'm getting ready. I'm like looking upstairs. I keep it downstairs in the bathroom. I could not find the beard trimmer everywhere. So imagine you're looking for God like something that's lost. You're opening drawers that you don't know what, that's not even your drawer, but maybe one of the kids put it in there. And I'll just say with your eyes, it's very easy, but what you give your attention to, you begin to fall in love with. You give your
Mhm.
attention first and then follows your affection.
Well, what you seek is what you find too. So if you're looking for something that's ungodly, you're going to find ungodly things. If you're looking for a community, start praying and God will reveal those people to you. So
So
what
I'm
do you got
just going to
now?
get practical
Uh-oh.
for all of
This
this,
is like a rabbit
for
hole.
all of us. I don't even think it's rabbit hole, but if my eyes look at this screen,
Hmm.
it's
Priority.
where I'm seeking.
Yeah.
Whereas, how much am I getting in the word? Where is my gaze?
Yeah.
What am I looking at? When you said seek first, I'm like, what am I looking for?
Hmm.
And am I filling a void in my life that's being filled with dopamine hits
Hmm.
when God's actually trying to give me a meaningful life, a significant life, a purpose-filled life of service to others, and I'm filling that void instead with dopamine hits
Hmm.
or lack thereof on a device.
Well, like I said, what you seek is what you find. And if we're seeking God, we're going to know who we are and whose we are, and that purpose and that meaning comes behind all of that. And there's going to be seasons where you might lose sight of that. And there's sometimes when we're looking for something, seeking out the pleasures of the world or something that we want, and we're working towards like that, that takes our gaze off of the Lord in the process, right?
And think about it this way, like I want to give you as the listener, as the viewer, I want to give you 4 hours this weekend. This episode airs on a Friday. And so today or tomorrow or Sunday, I want you to pick one of those days and do a screen-free day.
Mm.
And my guess is your day has more than 4 hours of screen time in that day.
Hmm.
And so just by putting your phone in that drawer over there or charging it in that room over there, and your gift to yourself is an untethered from technology day, what would God maybe want to speak? Would you feel more of a peace and less of an overwhelm just from a few hours untethered from
Hmm.
technology?
That's great. That's a great challenge. I think he's going to take it too.
I will, 100%. You better believe it. You should
You
ask
usually
me.
say like, "Hey, I'm doing this too," so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure that you are doing
And
this for
and
you.
we should do a follow-up next week.
You
And
might have phantom vibrations in your pocket or your purse or your jacket, or you think your phone's going off. It's not really real.
any last thoughts on practical advice for the young adult, the young professional, maybe the college student who feels exhausted,
Hmm.
feels overwhelmed,
Yeah.
Feels like they're coming up dry and they're just like, how do I do it all?
Oh man. Well, I would just say we are human beings, not human doings.
So stop doing so much.
So I would learn how to prioritize. What are your yeses and your nos? What is your bandwidth? And what is your tolerance for time and dedication? I'm a very, there are parts of me that are very black and white, and I live in a gray world. And gray means we're trying to justify my yeses and my nos. And I say maybe just in case. I have FOMO, fear of missing out, FOBO, which is fear of better options. So I sound like a wishy-washy person when I don't know a yes and a no because I have analysis paralysis because there's so much in my calendar, so much before me that I've committed to and said yes to. But I would say work as though you're working for the Lord. Everything you do, give 100%. And if there's anything in your life right now that you can stop doing that nobody else would even notice, then just stop doing it. Maybe you're going to the gym 7 days a week, and maybe you can need to drop that down to 4 times a week and 3 walks that are half an hour just to with no cell phone. Maybe it is, I need a clear space. If you're like me, like I can't work in clutter. It clutters my mind, it
Mhm.
clutters my thought, it clutters my spirit. I'm like, ah, I need to clutter my space so I feel the clarity and the peace and the sense of God that I can focus on my work. Maybe that's your homework. And you need to pick up the clutter because there's clutter in your physical space that's affecting your spiritual space and your cognitive space. So when it comes to that, I would just say if you feel tired, if you feel burnt out, if you feel exhausted, I don't think that it's you're lazy. I think you bit off more than you can chew, and now you feel like your gears and your tires are spinning. And I would challenge you to do one thing. Slow down enough to surrender it all to God and pray that he would give you a supernatural ability to accomplish everything that you've had said yes to. And when that yes is complete, maybe reevaluate whether you would ever say that yes again. And those are some things that Josiah and I have done, whether it's travel, teaching, preaching, a yes that we said yes to, and we're like, was that worth our time? Because it was a 2 hour commitment in this way, but it was actually 12 hours
Yep.
between the two of us, which
Yep.
is 24 hours.
Yep.
Next time, if that opportunity comes, I will send somebody else who
Yep.
has the time to do that, or I'll just have to say, you know what? Thank you so much for thinking of me, but the answer is no. So I think it's reprioritizing and shifting through, looking at your schedule. And I would look at this. I told this to a girl I mentor. She's like, Mike, I'm challenged in this way. What do I do? And I said, okay, ask yourself, what do you have control over? Because what you have control over means that you have the opportunity to continue that or to stop that or to reimagine that. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop doing some things because they're time wasters? Are you going to start doing some things differently? And then that land of in between is like, how do we have to rethink this, reposition this? And how can I shut my phone off, shut the TV off, shut my worship music off, and just do my homework for 30 minutes and get done 30 minutes of homework, which used to take me 3 hours because of all the
Mhm.
open chaos that
Yeah,
I allow in my physical space because it's a distraction.
for sure.
So I would say that you're not alone when you feel like this, but this is not a life that you want to live for the next 20 years. It's not sustainable.
And what a beautiful invitation of Jesus that he says, all of you
Hmm.
who are weary and
Hmm.
burdened, come to me and I will give you rest.
Yep.
It's a promise. It's his invitation to take on his easy yoke and to surrender your heavy yoke. And man, I'm telling you, like Micah, when you've done the balance wheel, or when
Hmm.
we together as a family or a marriage, and when you and I have both sat down, any last thoughts on the value of that exercise?
Oh man, it's a personal inventory. I would say being honest with yourself and with God when you do it will actually reveal the reality of it because I think when even like say you take a personality test and you want to be somebody else, but you're really not, like, I don't want to be so type A and so tightly
Yeah.
wound. I want to be more like that. So you answer differently. I would say with the balance wheel, answer the season that you're in because that balance wheel is always going to be shifting and changing. Those numbers are going to shift and change. But one thing that's always the lowest on my balance wheel is fun and hobbies. And I was like, when we came out of COVID, I was like, we need to have more fun because there's been so much tension in the world of which we live, so much uncertainty in the world of which we live. And I actually don't feel like that tension has actually alleviated at a economical or as a nation or whatever. I don't feel like that has actually alleviated. I feel like it's probably gotten even more tense because of the uncertainty of our nation with the presidential elections,
Totally.
inflation,
Totally.
jobs, all these different things, living for many people. So I would just say answer true to where you are, not to where you want to be, but where you want to be. What do you need to do to get there? And don't be afraid to make some of those changes and adjustments and advocate for yourself in the process and say no to a friend. Maybe say more yeses than nos. Maybe it's the other way around. What have you found in the balance wheel? Helpful or not so helpful?
I'm reminded of Carey Nieuwhof. He's an author. I listen to his podcast most weeks, and he says this: if you always feel exhausted after time off,
Mhm.
the problem isn't how you spent your time off, it's how you spend your time on.
I believe it.
And so I would just say like, man, for me, I'm similar. Micah and I are both very driven. We're achievers. We're maybe not perfectionists, but we're definitely the get more done people. We're gonna, create more than we consume. We have a few of those things where
Mhm.
we have no problem publishing an episode where we flubbed up a little bit on the podcast or got our words mixed a few times. But at the same time, so I don't think it's perfectionism that holds us back. I think if there's any bottleneck in our life or in my balance wheel where it gets clunky,
Mhm.
it is that I've spent too much time focused on work and pushing things forward and not taking Sabbath seriously enough and not taking rest or fun or rejuvenation or family time enough. And so I think the balance wheel, again, it's a tool that we hope you find value in,
Yeah.
that it can help you, and let us know if you have follow-up questions.
Yeah. So asking yourself, where do I need to simplify my life to enjoy it more?
This is the FYI podcast.
It's one small step for man,
Neil Armstrong sets foot on the moon.
one giant leap for mankind.
Sometimes one small step can lead to a giant leap. If you have a call to change the world for Christ, GFA World invites you to their ministry apprenticeship program. Take one small step. Log on to gfa.org/apprenticeship. Go to gfa.org/apprenticeship.